am Karen Burniston, the designer of Pop-It-Ups dies for Elizabeth Craft Designs, and the June 2014 Designer Challenge is to make photo accordion albums. Now, I wanted to start by showing off this photo accordion album, which was a collaborative project with the entire Designer Challenge team. They each made one page of an oval accordion album and sent it to me. I told them only that it needed to incorporate their photo, their blog address, and after that it could be any style, any color, anything that just showed off their crafting. And I just love the way this turned out. I put it all together, and now that can go with me when I travel to classes, and I can show all of my students, all the people that have made all these really cool samples that I show every time that I travel. Now, the way I'm going to travel with this album, because it is so thick, is I've got a little plastic photo case, and it fits in there just perfectly. I have had a lot of requests to teach how to make accordion albums with clear pages, so that's what I'm going to show in the video today for my photo accordion album. Okay, the secret ingredient to a clear album is just to find a transparent material that will still fold. So you can't go too thick or it won't fold. But this basil plastic paper, that would hold a fold, so you'd be able to make it out of that. And definitely you can just use transparencies from the office supply store. So you can either purchase the ones that are for write-ons. Those are not meant to go through the printer. Or you can get some that can go through the printer if you want to make some titles. For my project today, I'm going to use the brand new Katie Label Accordion. It is available in stores July 15th, 2014. And with all the dies, the first step is to take the Elizabeth Craft Designs die snips and go ahead and snip the tiny connection threads that separate all your individual parts. So I always go from the back of the die right up next to one side and snip. Then I'm going to turn, go to one of the other small connection threads and snip, turn again, go to the last little connection thread and snip that. That will take all the decorator dies out of the Katie Label Accordion. Now, I still have those little pokey threads sticking out. Those are going to be sharp. You're going to want to definitely get those off of there. Do that over a trash can or definitely away from your face. You don't want those little things to go flying when you're snipping them off. So now if I go right up next to the piece and snip with my die snips, it will actually leave very little nub, it's not going to have too much on there, and it's usually not even very sharp, so you could just leave it. But if those little spots bug you or if they're sharp, you can use the Elizabeth Craft Designs die file set to go in and file down anything that remains to make it smoother. Several of the accordion albums, like the Katie Label Accordion, the Oval, the Ring album, have an optional stitch die. So if you do not cut the connection threads that separate that stitching die from the slightly larger decorator die, then the spacing is always perfect. You just leave them together, and then every time you cut it, you'll get that little stitch line. It will be perfectly spaced, and you didn't have to line it up. But sometimes you're going to find a project where you do need to separate them. And right here off the bat, my first project, I am going to have to now separate them because I don't want stitch lines going right through Carl's face. So I'll go back to my die snips and go ahead and snip the connection threads, which is not to say I can't still get a cool inlaid stitch line. It's just that now I have to line them back up again. But once they're separated, you have another option, which is you don't always have to do a pressed down stitch. You can do a raised embossed stitch instead. When you want to do that, you're going to turn the piece over, put the piece stitch side down on the back of the label, switch to an embossing sandwich. So in this case, I'm going with a Sizzix Big Shot. I'll need to go down to tab 1. I'll put silicone and impressions pad on the bottom. That will become the bottom of my sandwich. Then I put my piece with the paper side down, the die behind it, and I'll use a little post-it note just to make sure it doesn't move. Then my cutting pad on top, roll it through my machine. When you do this two-step process where you die cut the big label first and then you press in the stitch lines from behind the piece second, what you get is this cool little raised embossed stitch line. It also embosses all of the die itself. So let me show you that. See how you get that whole little raised area, including an extra raised stitch line. Look at the difference between that and the press down stitch. Both nice, just different looks. I'm going to go ahead for this project, for my title page, and use the one where I had the raised emboss, and I actually just scribbled all over it with a gel pen. I thought that looked kind of cool. Next, I'll use the oval die that comes in the Katie Label Accordion set to die cut an oval out of the middle of my title block piece. I used some printer transparencies and printed my title onto a transparency, and then now I'm going to glue my title block around it. And what I did is I left enough transparency around. I printed it kind of out in the middle of the page so that I would be able to then die cut my Katie Label accordion around this piece. When you die cut a Katie Label accordion page, it's going to be just like any of the other accordion albums, and there are videos that show you how to assemble it. So you can go back and refer to those if you just need basic instructions. But what I've done is I've cut the page, but really for the clear pages, these aren't going to be my structural pages. So I do not need that long tab on the side. I'm going to take that off. I'm actually going to cut even inside the line a little bit because I'm going to go right around this piece and take just a little bit off all the sides. Not paying attention to how much, doesn't have to be even. This will never be seen. That outer frame area is just what's going to anchor it to the page. And now I'm just going to repeat that process 3 more times. So I've cut 3 more clear pages, trimmed them all down just a little bit smaller. With the accordion albums, the interior pages, so the decorative pages here, are eventually going to be connected to each other using some small tabs. With a clear album, that adhesive is going to be visible, but you can use a glue that dries clear. What I thought would be fun would be to use some little mini brads in bright colors, and it was going to be way easier for me to add the holes to be able to put the brads through right now before I've put the structure of my album together. So what I've done is gone through and in between each page punched some small holes, connected the pages together with those small brads. This really was, though, just about getting the holes in for the brads. So now what I can do is reach in there and remove all those brads and keep them for later. But the holes are now in the pages. That's going to make everything easier later on. Okay, time to cut some pages. Now for this particular technique, not every accordion album you would make, but when you're making a clear album, I want to be able to sandwich my clear page in between 2 solid pages. So that means I need 2 pages for every page. So I'm going to cut 8 accordion album pages using the Katie Label accordion die. Because I'd already used some of my red paper for some decorator pieces, I found my leftover strip wasn't quite wide enough for the die, but half of the pages do not need the long tab that's on the side. So as long as it's wide enough for the page itself, which is 4 1/4, it's fine. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this and just let the tab hang off the edge. Then I just go in with my scissors or trimmer and make that even there, because I do not need tabs on 4 of the pages. Now 4 of the pages I do need tabs, so I've got 2 and 2 here. I've got 2 spotted and 2 reds that do have the side tabs, and then 4 of them I cut those side tabs off. Now let's start with those 4. I'm also going to gut them. I'm going to remove all of the innards as well. So I just need a pair of scissors, cut it top and bottom, let that decorator piece fall out. Basically what I'm left with is just a pattern paper frame, and now I'm just going to repeat that with my other 3 pages. Just go in with the scissors, snip them top and bottom, let the decorator labels fall out. Okay, I'm going to assemble this album a little differently than what you're used to seeing when I do accordion albums, and that's because I've got these clear pages that I want to sandwich between 2 layers. First things first, I'm going to flip all of my decorator frames over so that I'm working now on the back of those papers. Okay, I'm going to start with page 1. I'm going to take a tape runner and go right around that page so that the whole back of that page now is sticky. Then I'm going to grab my page 1, that's the clear page, the one that has the title on it, and go ahead and stick that down into that adhesive. So remember, we trimmed the clear page a little bit smaller, so we'll be using the interior opening as our lineup point. So don't even worry about the outside corners, they're not going to match. You're going to go with the inside contours to line it up. Now there's not going to be very much sticky left because most of it's covered with transparency, so you're going to have to go back around the piece again with a tape runner to go ahead and make it sticky again. Now what's going to go on top is going to be your first structural page. Okay, we don't need the innards, those can come out, but we do want to make sure we keep that long tab on the side, and it does need to be pointed to the right. It needs to be between the 2 pages. That's what's going to connect them. Once again, you're probably going to line up the inner contours. In this case, the outer contours should line up as well, but it's much easier to trim the outer ones if you're a little bit off than the inner ones. So definitely use your inner contours as your lineup points. Now when you get that on, just give it a good press, and what you've done now is made a structural accordion page with the clear page sandwiched between 2 solid pages. So that makes it very durable, and it does have its little side tab to connect it to the next page. Okay, I'm going to speed things up just a little because we got 4 of these to do. So you're going to get the idea watching me do it 3 more times. Tape runner all over the back of the frame. What goes into that sticky? The page 2 clear page. So I need to go grab page 2 clear. What am I lining up with? Inner contours. Now you saw me on the first page go right back to my tape runner, but now we're on page 2 and there's going to be an extra step. I need to get something strong. I'm going to use some red line tacky tape, and this is what's going to be to attach our tab. So we want to basically hide the tab from page 1 in the sandwich. That way we don't see the tabs. So I'll peel up the liner, and then I'm going to go ahead. This one's going to be a valley fold, so I'm going to go ahead and fold that first so that I make sure I line it up so that I can still fold between the pages. And I'm just going to get the fold of that tab from page 1 right down against the edge of page 2, press it down really well. Now I've attached those pages together, but you do not see the tab because it's hidden in the sandwich. Now what's the top layer that's going to hide all of that? It's going to be another one of my structural pages. And again, I do not need the inner part, so I can gut it, cut it top and bottom to remove that inner part. I still want my long tab, so I'll go ahead and fold it so that I know where it is. And before I can put it down on the page, I need to get some adhesive on that page because my transparency's probably used up most of it. So I'll go ahead with my tape runner again, right around the page, and get my structural page pressed on. It's definitely a good idea to take your time with this process. You still do need to be able to fold between the 2 pages. Like I said, you're going to get real good at this watching me do it. Okay, you've got page 3. You start with your frame, tape runner all the way around. What goes into that tape runner? Page 3 clear page. Line up the inner contours and get it on there. What goes on next? Tacky tape. The tacky tape is what just makes sure that the pages don't separate from each other. So I just think it's a good idea. I'm not sure the tape runner would be strong enough to hold the structural pages together. So that's why I choose to use tacky tape. This time it's going to be a mountain fold. So if you want to fold the tab first, that sometimes can be easier just to make sure that your pages still can fold on that mountain. And then just give it a good press. Now I need another structural page, and once again, I do need the side tab, but I do not need the inner guts. So I can take my scissors and just trim those out, top and bottom. We'll just zoom through it with a tape runner is how you're going to attach that page. And again, you want the tab hanging off the end so that it can still fold. Down to our last page, and what do you think it starts with? A tape runner all over the back of that frame. What goes into that tape runner? Page 4 clear. Again, line up the inner contours. What goes on next? A strip of tacky tape to hold on our structural tab. This one will be a valley fold, so if it helps to fold that tab up to help line it up, go ahead and do that. Then tape runner, tape runner, tape runner, and on goes the final page. Okay, we have a tab remaining out there on the right. If I had more pages, that's how I would attach them, but I'm done with this one, so I'll cut that tab off. Through the magic of video editing, you now see that I've added some additional decorations, and I'm now ready to assemble. So what I did here is I brought page 1 over to page 2, and remember the holes were already punched for my brads, so I just had to put the brads through to connect them. I also did the same between page 3 and page 4. Now my last little bit of connection is I need to connect the 2 sets to each other. And again, the holes are already there, but that can be a little bit of a trickiness with my fingers. So now what I have to do is I have to bring that tab over, hold it in place, get my brad somehow through the hole. As you can see, it can be a little bit tricky to manipulate those, but however it's easiest to do. Now every once in a while you get a transparency that is brittle. And it's not all of them, it's just occasionally. And what can happen when you get a brittle one is unfortunate oopsies like this. I broke my card. Now, rather than just fool you with some video editing, I figured I'd just teach you how I go about fixing things like this. In this case, I would just use clear tape, just regular old Scotch tape. Cut myself a little patch for the front and the back of that little tab where I broke it. Now, it didn't break on a fold line. It actually broke somewhere else, and that's because transparencies can be brittle, so you do have to be a little bit careful with them. But you can see I've got a little patch there, and it's not terribly noticeable because that tab is pointed towards the back, but I decided I would just move my little crowns and add them to all the pages so that it would just kind of disguise where I had put a patch in there. So there you see my finished album. It's working just fine with that little patch in there on my break point. So I'm going to remember that those particular transparencies seemed a little brittle, and probably the next time I'll test one first, just bend it back and forth a few times before I use it. I get a lot of questions from people about what size envelope to use, and it kind of depends on how thick your album is. The Katie is an A2 size when folded, but probably only a 2-page Katie is going to fit in an A2 envelope. If you've got a 4-pager, I'm going to suggest you go up to an A6 envelope. And as you can see here, that 4-page Katie Label Accordion is going to fit perfectly right there in that A6. If I can squish it down pretty good, it probably will mail for a single stamp. It's more at that point about height of the envelope than it is about the size. Now, another thing people always ask me is, what about the square albums, like the Fancy and the Circle and the new Ring accordion? What size envelope should I use for those? Here's a clear album I made with the Fancy accordion. Now that one is definitely, it's about 4 3/4 square, so it's not going to fit in an A2 envelope no matter how many pages. It's not going to fit in an A6 envelope no matter how many pages, but it's probably going to fit really nicely, even with many pages, in an A7 envelope. So that's meant for a 5x7 card. It'll accommodate a square album just perfectly, mail for a single stamp. If you don't like it sloshing, just pin the envelope down inside with some tape runner before you close it. This clear sandwiching technique for the accordions would work with any of them, but if you like the Katie Label Accordion, it will be available in July 2014. Go to ecraftdesigns.com for more information. If you've enjoyed this tutorial, I hope you'll subscribe to my YouTube channel and like my Facebook page. You can always find more ideas on my blog, KarenBurniston.com. Thanks for watching.